Your everyday gadgets' rechargeable batteries are most likely made possible by the Congolese child labor industry, who are exploited every single day for mineral extraction to feed the Western tech boom. A recent Amnesty International report sounded the alarm on a blood mineral mined by Congolese children as young as 7 years old and used in rechargeable lithium-ion batteries found in most of our laptops, smartphones, and even electric cars. The mineral is known as cobalt, and more than half of the world's supply comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, including at least 20%, which is mined by so-called artisanal miners in the southern part of the country. Now, the report titled "This is What We Die For" explains the conditions they work in. These artisanal miners mine by hand using the most basic tools to dig out rocks from tunnels deep underground. Artisanal miners include children as young as 7 who scavenge for rocks containing cobalt in the discarded byproducts of industrial mines and who wash and sort the ore before it's sold. Now, most of the cobalt is then resold to corporations by Congo Dongfeng Mining International, a wholly owned subsidiary of China's Huawei Cobalt Company. Now, from there, Amnesty was able to trace the cobalt to products linked to some of the world's largest and best-known consumer electronic companies, including Apple, Dell, HP, Huawei, Lenovo, LG, Microsoft, Samsung, Sony, and Vodafone, as well as other car manufacturers like Daimler AG, Volkswagen, and Chinese firm BYD. Overall, there are between 110,000 to 150,000 artisanal miners in the Congo, including over 40,000 children as miners in the country. Most of them tasked with producing cobalt between 12 and 24 hours a day for just $1 to $2 wages, according to UNICEF. Now, 17 children interviewed by Amnesty who worked in 5 different mines described being beaten or seeing other children being beaten by security guards. They also said those guards who are hired by the mining companies demanded money from those children, and without recourse against exploitive practices, they are frequently taken advantage of by the traders. But Congo, one of the poorest countries in the world, has suffered more than a century with colonialism and exploitation by Western nations, driven by consumer and industry demands on other continents. Even before Europe scrambled for control in Africa, though, one royal had already set his sights on the difficult-to-reach area of Congo. In 1876, King Leopold II of Belgium organized a conference where participants discussed ways to stop the West African slave trade, get medical aid to Africa, and coordinate map-making efforts. But the conference, of course, and the supposedly benevolent committee he agreed to head were nothing more than smokescreens for the king's ambitions of building a railway that could carry goods out of the heart of Africa. And thus, he waged a humanitarian war. Sound familiar? With the king, not the Belgian government, as owner and ruler, people were forced to extract the country's immense wealth, including rubber, which was exported to fuel the industrial boom of the 19th and early 20th century Europe and America. Under the guise of bringing civilization to the Africans, Marty Jezer, writing for the Brattleboro Reformer, explained the brutal lengths Leopold took. This army forcibly conscripted African youth to fill its ranks. It then went from village to village, taking the women hostage and forcing the men to go deep in the jungle to tap the indigenous rubber trees. Those who resisted were mowed down by machine gun fire. Many were beheaded or had their hands cut off, with women held hostage and men working in forced labor to maximize the rubber harvest. No one was tending to crops, and starvation took hold, as well as disease creeping in. Between 1880 and 1920, the country lost about 10 million people, or at least half of the country's population. International outrage finally erupted in 1908, at which point the Belgian government took control from Leopold. But as Jezer noted, Belgium extracted rubber, ivory, diamonds, and uranium from the Congo and gave back nothing. No schools, no hospitals, no infrastructure, except that which facilitated the export of resources. Now, the uranium used to make the atom bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki even came from mines in the Congo. Congo threw off the shackles of colonialism in 1960, but the next several years saw a quick succession of leaders, and by 1971, a corrupt one-party government under Joseph Mobutu took over, renaming the country Zaire. Mobutu, a staunch anti-communist, won the support of several U.S. administrations. And since Mobutu was forced to flee in 1977, a civil war has raged and the country has been devastated by an AIDS epidemic. And this is where Congo finds itself today. Despite some reforms and democratic elections, it's in relatively the same place it was more than 100 years ago, under a corrupt, rubber-hungry king whose brutality knew no limits. Both now and then, the rush was for cobalt, rubber, diamonds, copper, basically whatever Congo has that the world wants, no matter the human cost. And Chinese, American, and European companies are exploiting child and adult laborers to feed the tech cravings of people around the world who find themselves in a position to indulge their hunger for gadgets. These Congolese child laborers will probably never own a smartphone with a rechargeable battery, but without their toil for meager wages and dangerous conditions, it's hard to say whether you or I could.